delicacy of watercolor paintings of Golden Age illustrators like Arthur Rackham and Jessie Lee Wilcox. 3 different types of stories, 3 completely different moods in the visuals. By doing this, Hyman gave visual cues that supported the nature of the author's text. Because Hyman employed diverse compositions, her layouts were never stilted or boring. She made dynamic use of double-page illustrations, single-page illustrations, illustrations with and without borders, illustrations in sidebars, and illustrations within illustrations in a boxy comic book style. In Jane Wishing, there are alternating layouts, with the airy and colorful representing the fantasy world, while the black and white and cluttered represent the real world. Like Dorothy, the reader is whisked off to Oz whenever Jane wishes for something fanciful, and taken back to Kansas whenever her family tries to ground her in reality. Hyman also makes use of themes in her compositions. In Sleeping Beauty, every picture is set in a window or archway. In Sense Past King, the center binding is used to repeatedly separate protagonist from foe. Such devices heighten the storytelling with dramatic and diverse layouts that continuously stimulate readers. Perhaps Trina Short Hyman's most memorable artistic achievement was her distinctive heroes and heroines. Her characters start with expressive faces full of yearning and pathos. She adds to this a very particular attitude for most of her protagonists. The men are often bearded, weathered heroes who have obviously seen much of the harsh world. Sleeping Beauty and Snow White both feature bearded and seasoned princes complete with crow's feet and furrowed brows. Rapunzel's prince starts out clean-shaven, but transforms into the brooding, battered hero by the end. Likewise, when Howard Pyle's hero in King Stork is described as having socks and shoes, Hyman dresses him down in only tattered leg cloths held together by string. As a result of this, the Trina hero is more empathetic. Despite being a fictional character in a fantastical setting, he has the face of an everyman. His trials and tribulations are not on a real-life scale, but his looks are. Hyman suggests that everyday people can take part in otherworldly adventures, and thus brings the real-life reader more intimately into the story. The Trina heroine is an equal match for her hero, if not better. She is empowered, at times bold, petulant, or fierce, and always sensual and earthy. As a divorced lesbian woman, Hyman was very interested in empowered and multiracial females. This is particularly apparent in books she illustrated for her author daughter, which are entirely focused on strong women. In Sense Past King, the main character is changed from male to female. In Serpent Slayer, the stories are all about strong females from the world over. Featured in the stories are short women, plump women, pale women, dark women, willowy women, and voluptuous women, as well as old and even young women. The tousled aesthetic imparts a breezy sultriness and a compelling aloofness that makes all of Hyman's princesses feel like Valkyries or Amazons. Hyman also doesn't balk at the sexuality of her female characters, up to and including nudity. Rather than seeing it as objectifying, she embraces it as empowering. It can be found in the Queen and her attendants in Sleeping Beauty, while the Quitting Deal features a smoking, breastfeeding mother. The Water of Life twice depicts a naked maiden on a stag being chased by hunters in a tapestry. And perhaps the strongest example is in King Stork, where the heroine is attired in the sheerest and most low-cut of gowns. Hyman demands that this wayward character be treated as a powerful, complete woman. It would have been a disservice to the narrative to make the wicked princess the murdering apprentice of an evil witch into a demure, timid creature. Glorying in all their sensuality, these women, unlike the men, become even more fantastic and mythical. The princesses are unnaturally beautiful in their messiness. Even Rapunzel, with her yards of rumpled hair, doesn't need to tidy it to look lovely. In contrast, the men are made less beautiful, more rugged, and more subject to the vagaries of reality, and their wrinkles and whiskers. There's a lived-in and must quality to all of the characters that makes them more empathetic, but in the case of the females, also more mythical and ravishing. As a whole, the messiness of both characters and scenes adds movement to the pictures and implies complexity, the former appealing to a younger audience and the latter appealing to the older. Hymen got away with sensuality and crow's feet afflicted heroes because she embraced the true nature of fairy tales. Fairy tales themselves are kind of creepy, kind of gory, and kind of sensual. The Cinderella whose stepsisters cut off their heels to fit a slipper does not have a glossy Disney look. As such, Hymen not only represented the sensual and brooding subtext, but also the violent and macabre. In Sleeping Beauty, Hymen chooses to portray the corpses of heroes stuck and rotting in the enchanted hedge. Likewise, King Stork is replete with hero heads impaled on spikes, complete with carrion crows picking at eyeballs. And in Water of Life, there is an illustration of emaciated children, suffering in a famine. Hymen delivers what a fairy tale promises. The sensuality, gore, and tribulations of these stories are taken seriously in the illustrations, and children reading the story, who know when they're being patronized by airbrushed princesses and silly conflicts, feel treated like equals by these artistically authentic fairy tales. Like most illustrators, Hymen elaborated upon the story in the illustrations. She includes animals in many of her panels, despite there being little or no mention of them in the text. She was also fond of launching the story before the prose via title page illustrations. Often panoramic views, they simultaneously introduce the setting and introductory action. In Iron John, the title character is captured in the woods before the text starts. Similarly, Rothbart stalks swans in the title page of Swan Lake, and in The Water of Life, the gnome peers at the princess through the trees. In Tight Times, the soon-to-be-rescued kitten is rummaging through the trash. In Bearskin, the king is seen riding through the woods. And in St. George and the Dragon, the hero and his entourage are introduced. Perhaps the best example occurs in Little Red Riding Hood, Hymen's favorite fairy tale. As a child, she spent a whole year dressing up as Little Red Riding Hood. This is why in the title pages, the eponymous character is basically a child Trina reading her own Little Red Riding Hood book before the story starts. A vivid imagination allowed Hymen to embellish characters with lavish costumes and accessories. As a result, the characters have greater presence. They are more complex and alluring. Iron John has a hawk perched on his head to convey his unity with nature, and has antlers even as a human. In Swan Lake, Odette always stands on tiptoe, and her dress is reminiscent of a tutu. Thus, Hymen salutes the Swan Lake Ballet and makes Odette more bird-like at the same time. In The Water of Life, the text describes the enchanted princess as simply not being able to move or speak. Hymen makes